How does a city's most feared thug become its spiritual pioneer? Today, we're diving into the incredible, true story of Lee Ki-pung, a man whose life was a dramatic battle between violence and faith, and how his personal transformation literally changed the course of history for an entire island.
So this story comes to us from Pastor James Hong. He is a dedicated researcher of Korean mission history who actually served as a missionary in China and now has a ministry in Maryland in the USA. We're going to be sharing from his book, Remember and Repay, 52 Weeks of Mission Meditation every week. And this story right here, this is the one for the first week of February. All right, let's set the scene. The date is February 3rd, 1908. A mission is officially starting on the remote Korean island of Jeju. The man leading the charge? Pastor Lee Ki-pung, a name that would go down in history. But, the legend of the pastor is really built on the ashes of the man he used to be. Yeah, because before he was Pastor Lee, he went by let's just say, a very different title in his hometown of Pyongyang. He was the city's most notorious thug. The life of Lee Ki-pung is just a story of complete opposites. It's like two totally different men living in the same body. One was a feared brawler, and the other a man of incredible faith. To really understand how this transformation happened, we first need to get a clear picture of just how deep his violent youth really went. This guy was a total paradox. On one hand, he was a child prodigy. He had memorized these ancient, complex texts by the time he was 6. But he was also what they called a 술gore, basically a really heavy drinker, and he was famous for being an unbeatable headbutter. But what he was really known for, what made people fear him, was his terrifying skill with a stone. He was the leader in the Sikjeon, and you gotta picture this. These were massive, organized stone fights that would break out across the Daedong River. In Pyongyang, you did not want to mess with this guy. So at this time, Pyongyang is starting to open up to the West, and a new kind of foreigner is showing up: Christian missionaries. It's in this changing city that Lee Ki-pung's world of violence is about to crash head-on with the peaceful mission of a man named Samuel Moffat. And this one encounter, well, it would set off a chain reaction that nobody could have seen coming. So, seeing Moffat, Lee Ki-pung just did what he was best at. He picked up a stone, took aim, and threw it with pinpoint accuracy. It hit Moffat right in the jaw, sending him straight to the ground, bleeding. For the thug of Pyongyang, this was just another day at the office. But for the story of his life, this was absolute rock bottom. An act of violence like that, it leaves a mark, and not just on Moffat's face, but on Lee Ki-pung's conscience. So after the chaos of the Sino-Japanese War, he comes back to Pyongyang, and he is just haunted by what he did. He knows he has to face the man he wronged. He actually finds Samuel Moffat and makes this unbelievable confession. He says, straight up, "I am the thug who threw the stone that scarred your chin." Can you even imagine the courage that must have taken to stand in front of your victim and just own it completely? And this wasn't just an apology. It was a complete and total surrender. Weighed down by all this guilt, Lee Ki-pung just breaks down, weeping, and begs for forgiveness he absolutely does not feel he deserves. It was right there, in that moment of vulnerability, that the old thug died and a new man chose to be born. And believe me, he didn't waste a single moment. His transformation wasn't just some emotional feeling that faded away. It was immediate, and it was real. The former brawler started building a life centered on service and faith, right away. You can just watch his new life take shape, step by step. By 1901, he's traveling as a colporteur, which means he's distributing Bibles. A year later, he's a josa, or a helper to another missionary. But here's the most incredible move. In 1903, he enrolls in the Pyongyang Theological Seminary, a school founded by Samuel Moffat, the very man he attacked. By 1907, the journey is complete. He's ordained as a pastor. So you have to be wondering, how in the world does a man with such a violent past even get into a seminary? Well, the answer lies in the incredible grace of his former victims. Samuel Moffat and the other missionary, Swallen, didn't just forgive him. They became his champions. They opened the doors to a future he never could have possibly imagined. Now, all of this intense personal change is happening during a massive spiritual awakening that was sweeping across Korea, known as the Pyongyang Great Revival of 1907. The entire city was just electric with change and faith. And it's in this exact atmosphere that Lee Ki-pung's new life is about to take on a truly historic meaning. On September 17, 1907, he stood with 6 other men. This number 7 is so significant because they were ordained together, becoming the first 7 pastors in the history of the Korean Presbyterian Church. What a moment. And there, right at the center of it all, stands a former gangster. But for Lee Ki-pong, getting ordained wasn't the end of the journey. It was just the beginning. He was immediately given a unique title, Korea's first missionary. Now, this wasn't a foreign appointment. For the very first time, the Korean church itself was sending one of its own to a new field. And what was that new, challenging field? Jeju Island? The man who once ruled the riverbanks of Pyongyang with a stone in his hand was now being sent to a remote island with a Bible. The transformation was finally and completely finished. You know, the story of Lee Ki-pong is so much more than just a tale of one man's redemption. It's a powerful example of what can happen when deep remorse is met with radical forgiveness. It really leaves us with a profound question to think about. What is the true potential for transformation that lies within a single life?